Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers Q&A. Let's get started. Happy Monday, everybody. I am ready to answer all of your questions. It's been a couple of weeks since we did one of these, so I'm excited to get going. See some people are starting to populate in the chat. And first one from Lakers in 7. I feel like Max needs like one or two more shots than what we got today. 30 minutes in starting, and Gabe got the same amount of shots. What do you think? So I actually just got rid of the box score, so I will pull it up. 1 second. So Max took 3 shots. What I will say in terms of field goals is Max did have 4 free throws. So he got to the free throw line 2 separate times, which would mean he took 5 shots, not 3. But in terms of offensive involvement, I think you'd maybe like to see a shot or two more, like you said, being in the starting lineup with those 4 players. Austin, Rui, LeBron, and AD. He's going to be the 5th option by a significant margin, just based on his offensive skill set right now. So I think Max is more out there to do the little things, the defense, the rotations, diving on the ground for loose balls, making the extra pass, attacking closeouts, and that leading into kickouts and whatnot. So I get what, like, where you're coming from, but I also think realistically Max's role is not going to be that involved offensively. I think he's more of a 4th or 5th option in most lineups, and I think he can develop into more. But for now, I think the Lakers are really relying on him, for the defensive end, and I think that that's what we're going to see, especially with that starting lineup. He's primarily there just to be a catch and shoot, spot up guy, attack closeouts, and that's primarily it. Fang Charlie, Jovan Buha, Buha. What up, man? Dark Galaxy, Vexalate, yo. Dark Galaxy, is it normal for a GM to be with the team at all times? I feel like Pelinka always is with the Lakers team, even for away games. I also did get one earlier from Liberty. Jovan, do you regularly see Pelinka at Crypto? So I do regularly see him at Crypto. He sits like diagonally behind the Lakers bench. As for how regular that is, it's pretty regular, especially for home games, for a GM, team president to be there. In terms of, like, he will go scout college games and the G League showcase, those different types of things. So he's not on every road trip or road game, but he is active around the team. I would say maybe more present than some other teams, but I don't think that's uncommon, or I don't really have like a read on that in terms of like I don't know if you're trying to apply that's a negative. I don't think so. Liberty, Jovan, what do you think is going to happen if not a single trade happens to the Lakers? I don't think LeBron and AD are going to be happy, and at that point they can't ask out. So I guess it would have to. We'll see how the rest of. In this scenario, we're going with the hypothetical here. I think it depends on how the rest of the season plays out. And can they somehow go on a run and maybe exceed expectations, and maybe that kind of quells some of the frustration or anger from not making a move. Otherwise, I think that opens up the possibility for some bigger changes in the offseason. Is it Vexalate? Do you think with how JJ loves Rui that he won't get traded. If so, that probably means no Cam Johnson. So I will be, as I said, I have a story coming out on The Athletic tomorrow, most likely potentially Wednesday, but hoping for tomorrow. And then I'll be doing a follow-up episode of Buha's Block talking about, talking through different trade subjects and topics and answering various questions on it. As for Rui, my read on Rui is he is someone that the Lakers have talked about as a longer-term piece. When going back to the summer, some of the buzz from both team personnel and league personnel, it was always Austin, Rui, Dalton, and Max, and a little bit of JHS, but I think they've since changed course with JHS. But so I think Rui is viewed as like a longer term piece. I don't think that means they would not trade him, but I think when you look at, there are 4 mid-sized salaries that the Lakers can trade between now and January 15th. As on January 15th, Max Christie becomes available, so then it becomes 5. But between now and January 15th, the Lakers have 4 mid-sized salaries to trade. That's Rui, D'Lo, Gabe, and Vando. I think among those 4, the guy that they'd prefer to keep, from that group would be Rui. That's the guy that they view as the longest term piece. Gabe is obviously underwhelmed. Vando has been injured, and D'Lo they've tried to trade during 2 previous trade cycles ahead of the 2024 trade deadline, and again in the 2024 offseason. They've been unable to unload him, but I expect them to try to trade him again. So I do think JJ's I wouldn't say love of Rui, but fondness of Rui or trust in Rui makes him less likely to be traded. But I think for a guy like Cam Johnson, I think the Lakers would consider that. Question from Lido. Do you think the way JJ is using D'Lo hurts his trade value? I know we want to trade him, but he looks terrible sometimes. I don't know who would be interested. I think it's a combination of the way he's being used and just who D'Lo is and how his game is. I think there are times like last night against Memphis where he just floats, and it can be pretty rough. Like his floor as a player is just so low, and it's like if we're comparing it to like buildings or something, like the floor just gives out. The building collapses when things aren't going right for D'Lo. Where I think for some of the players, there's a little bit more reliability, a little bit more stability, and a little bit of a higher floor. And his ceiling is higher too. So that's the thing, is like on any given night, he could be the Lakers' 3rd best player. On any given night, he could be like their 7th or 8th best player. And that wild swing, I think, doesn't do him any favors, both with this coaching staff and around the league in terms of how he's perceived. Now, as for, one thing I've talked about is the Lakers made a concerted effort to restructure the offensive hierarchy. And obviously that's come partly at the expense of LeBron earlier in the season, though that's kind of, I think, stabilized a bit since then. But empowering AD more, empowering Austin, I would say empowering Rui even to an extent, like making him a full-time starter and just having him have a certain role, though he's been inconsistent as well. But one of the guys that has come at the detriment of is D'Angelo Russell, and he's been marginalized at times. I don't think LA has looked to really maximize his on-court performance or value. I think there's been like that period where, as things started to shift more toward LeBron and D'Lo moved to the bench, I do think that they tried to get him more involved there for a couple of weeks. And then he also had, he just had the Portland game. It was his best game of the season. I said last night, one of the best games, if not the best, by a role player this season, from the Lakers. But then he has games like Minnesota where he's in foul trouble, 2 for 10 shooting, and basically is benched for the majority of the first half. Like they could have brought him in for a second shift in that first half that they chose not to. Last night against Memphis, gets benched in the 4th quarter, and I think it's just his will to compete and be engaged, and the focus and awareness just aren't always there. And you can kind of tell early in a game if D'Lo's present or not. And when he's present, he's really good. When he's not, he's not. And Is some of that maybe relating back to his role and coming off the bench and being a bit marginalized? Perhaps. But at the end of the day, he's in a contract year. The Lakers have made the decisions that they made. And I put a little bit more of the onus on him to be a professional and to be locked in regardless of if he's not happy with his role or not, or even if it's not even a happiness thing, if it's more just like he struggles in the role he's being put in. Like, I think he's a good enough shooter and just offensive talent and has enough skill to figure out a way to still be effective. And again, we've seen him be effective for various stretches in various games, but the night to night consistency just has not been there this season. The shot has been all over the place. His feet, the placement and just the shot to shot consistency has not been there. So I don't absolve I don't think the Lakers have maximized him, and I think if anything, his trade value's gone down just from like a on court fit perspective. But I think anyone trading for D'Lo anyway is trading for him as an expiring contract more so than anything else. Question from Dark Galaxy. Jovan, what do you think of a lineup of AR, Max, DFS, LeBron, and AD would look like on both ends? I really like this lineup. I think that's a realistic outcome, depending on how things go with the trade deadline for the Lakers. But you have 2 3-and-D guys in Max and DFS, 2 guys who can play off the ball, and you could run, I think, a lot of 2-man game with AR and LeBron, AR and AD, LeBron and AD. AD and LeBron with AD as the ball handler, some stack actions with those 3. And then you have Max and DFS in the corners, spotting up, screening, cutting, doing the dirty work. And then defensively, you have those 2 as your primary defenders. And Max is guarding backcourt guys, DFS is guarding wing guys and big forwards. And then if you really, if you're playing a team that has like a Boston, of course, LeBron and Austin have to be engaged defensively in terms of like their on-ball assignments and what you're asking of them. But I think DFS is about as good as it gets among realistic 3-and-D targets right now. And I think, especially if you can keep Rui and move him to the bench and have Rui be more of like an energy scorer guy who brings a jolt, and like, I think that suits Rui's skill set a little bit more. And then DFS can take on some of those primary assignments. And he's shooting, I haven't checked in a couple games, but as of like 3 games ago, he was a 41% 3-point shooter. So he's obviously having a pretty good season from deep. Question from Ibrahim. Hey, Jovan, love your content. Thank you. Would you do a DFS, Cam Johnson, Cam Thomas, and Sharp for D'Lo, Rui, Gabe, JHS, and 2 firsts? Okay, this is a lot to digest. Let me give me like 2 seconds to process this trade. Okay, so DFS and Cam are to me the 2 big gets. I do like Sharp. Then Cam Thomas, I'm a little bit. I know Cam Thomas has a cult following, and maybe there are some in the chat that love Cam Thomas. I don't know if he exudes like winning player qualities. Would be my opinion on that. However, I think the value overall from what you're getting from the Brooklyn side is probably worth 2 firsts. Maybe, I'd love to do this trade for a first in a couple seconds, but they've been asking for a couple of firsts just for Cam Johnson. So I think also adding in DFS and Cam Thomas, like, you probably got to bite the bullet. In this case, I would assume the Lakers probably start AD, LeBron, Cam Johnson, maybe Cam and DFS, or Matt, like 2 of Cam, DFS, probably Cam and then DFS or Max. My concern with starting DFS and Cam is you might be a little bit too slow on the perimeter, where Max is a little bit quicker, a little bit more athletic. But maybe you go Cam and Max and Austin, and then off the bench, it's like DFS, Cam Johnson, Sharp, and Dalton, and then Vando once he returns. I think this one's interesting. I think Brooklyn would be looking for more. Like, I always look at it from the Lakers perspective first, and that's kind of all these deals I look at first from the Lakers perspective of just like, would they even entertain this? Then I think that the next step is obviously looking at it from the other team's perspective. I think Brooklyn would want more for those 4 guys. I think especially the first 3, if they were holding bidding wars individually, I think they could probably get collectively at least 2 firsts plus like some additional second round compensation, if not potentially 3 firsts for those first 3 combined, either in, a couple separate trades or each individually in a trade. So I think this is probably low for what Brooklyn would want for those 3. But from the Lakers side, if Brooklyn was interested in this, I would be interested in this. I see Lion King asking about Tyrese Halliburton and Tyrese Maxey, or I guess maybe you're asking about Maxey because it was 2 separate questions. I mean, I would give up a lot for Maxey, but Austin and 2 picks, but Philly's not doing that. Super chat from Norma Maldonado. Hi, Buha gang. Thanks for all the support. Let's help Jovan get to 20K subs for the end of 2024. Be sure to like, share, and comment. Wishing you all many blessings to you and yours during the holidays. Thank you, Norma. Shout out to Norma. That's my mom. Let's get to, if you're watching right now and you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing, and let's get these likes and comments up on the stream. ASD123, yo Buha. What up, man? Jamar Sullivan, would you trade Austin Reeves for RJ Barrett, or I'm assuming you mean Jaden Ivey? For RJ, I would not. For Jaden Ivey, I think I would. Yeah. It's, I mean, I don't know. That I got to look at Ivey's contract, but I think so. Nazir H. Jovan, what are the ceiling and floor if we were to add Zion? Okay. This is a fun one. I mean, ceiling, I think they could win the championship with a healthy Zion and AD and LeBron. That's like maybe the best front court paint finishing trio in NBA history, honestly. They put a lot of pressure on the rim, a lot of pressure on the paint, draw a lot of fouls. Defensively, Zion and LeBron next to AD gives me some pause and some concern, although AD is the type of big you would want to have next to Zion to help him and to kind of put out or to help bolster some of his limitations on that end. I mean, the floor is like if Zion, if you trade a bunch of stuff for Zion and then he gets injured, or AD, if any of the big 3 in this scenario get injured, of course, the floor could be like play-in team or potentially even missing the play-in. So I would say, depending on what that package looks like, the floor could be pretty low, but the ceiling, I think, could be easily a championship. So I would, if like, anytime we're talking about guys who are dealing with injuries or whatnot, I think the key is always like doing your due diligence and getting the intel in terms of what's realistic for said player. And if Zion gets cleared and there's some confidence as to how healthy he could be the rest of the season, I'd be interested. Obviously, if not, then that's probably too risky, despite the talent, despite the pedigree. So he's not, if we're looking at a potential 3rd star fit, he's obviously not like the perfect 3rd star, but in terms of a ceiling raiser and just like a pure talent play, I think that it's obvious. Now, I think there's some spacing issues. I think there's some defensive issues. It's not exactly the best fit. I would like a lot of staggering in that case between, like, really, a lot of staggering between LeBron and Zion. But I mean, look, I think Zion's so talented that, again, if you can get the clearance on the health, I would be open to that, depending on the price too. Sam Davison, Dennis of the Warriors, Hertz Jovan, haven't heard you talk about the move. What do you think about it? Thanks, Buha. I would say I like it. I think I didn't really talk about it, but one thing I did say about it is like I think it makes sense for Golden State because DeAnthony Melton is injured, and that was a big piece for them. Either originally as a starter and as a closer, and like he was just a big piece for what they were trying to do. So Dennis Schroeder is not he's not the caliber of defender that DeAnthony Melton is, but he's obviously a better offensive player, more dynamic, more skilled offensive player. And I think he's a really good fit. Like I think the competitive fire is there. I think him and Draymond is a really interesting, similar to Chris Paul and Draymond. Now you got Dennis and Draymond in terms of a like that kind of fiery duo. And say what you will about Dennis, but like he's a foxhole guy. He's a guy that you want on your team in terms of from a competitive, like he brings it every night on both ends. Can he be overpowered by bigger, more athletic guards? Sure. Can his shot selection and turnovers sometimes be a bit iffy? Yes. Are there certain limitations there? Yes. Like to me, he's probably better suited to be more like a sixth man type or even seventh man. Sounds like he's going to be starting in Golden State. So maybe depending on the role, maybe his role is a little bit too big there. But I think Dennis is a guy that you as long as you have the right guardrails around his potential role, he's a guy who's going to bring it every night. I think he helps, especially in the regular season, just from you can go through the doldrums of a sleepy January 13th game. And Dennis is a guy that's going to be bringing a certain level of spark and just juice to a lineup. So I like it for Golden State. I think my one thing is like, he's pretty small. And I think the combination of him and Steph, like offensively, I like, but defensively, and Steph has long been better defensively than people have given him credit for. So it's not even like knocking Steph. I just don't love in general having like a 6'3" and a 6'1" guy as your closing backcourt defensively. I just think at some point you're too small. You run into an OKC, you run into a Boston, and you just can be picked on defensively because of that. So if I'm Golden State, he's probably tentatively in their closing lineup. I would like to have a different look where you have a little bit more size out there and you're not as dependent on him defensively from that perspective. But overall, I think the price was fair. And I did say last night, I believe, that one potential fallout from this is actually helping the Lakers in that setting the market price for a guy of Dennis's caliber, like that price is going to be a little bit lower. And we might just see a trade deadline where a lot of these trades end up being like 2 seconds or 3 seconds for these guys that in the past might have cost the first round pick, because you could make an argument that Dennis warranted a first round pick with his play. He was averaging 18 and 6, career high percentages, I believe, from the floor and from beyond the arc. So he was having a career year. And for that type of guy, who again, it looks like it's going to be a starter in Golden State, for him to be going for 3 seconds, like that potentially lowers the asking price for some of these guys across the league, at least with Brooklyn, right? And maybe now Dorian Finney-Smith goes for 2 or 3 second round picks. Maybe Cam Johnson goes for 1 first round pick instead of the 2 that they've been asking for. So I think from the Lakers perspective, to bring it back or to bring it full circle, that's a positive development. I know some fans wanted Dennis back, and that's not going to happen now. But one positive thing for the Lakers from this could just be the asking price, or at least the market price for some of these fringe starter / like key bench guy role players could be a little bit lower than initially anticipated. Because right now, the one problem for the Lakers and a bunch of teams is that there are far more buyers than sellers. So when you have more buyers than sellers, the sellers can afford to be patient and raise the asking price. But the Dennis trade maybe set the market a little bit lower than anticipated, and that's a good thing for the Lakers. Super chat from, is this Yo-Yo Lake Show or JoJo Lake Show? I'm interested. But thank you for the super chat. What up, Jovan? Would you trade for Zoe? If so, what is the package? So similar to Zion, the thing I come back to with Lonzo Ball is just his health. And I'm pulling up his contract right now. I keep forgetting. I believe it's in like the 20. No, it's a little bit. Yeah. It's 21.4 million. And this season he is averaging. He's played 9 games, 17 minutes a game, averaging 5 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 37% shooting, 34% on threes. And pulling up his game logs here quickly. He's been playing a bit better recently. His last game against Charlotte was his best game of the season. But the problem with Lonzo, so you got the injury part, which I think that's the biggest concern. And like already he's only played in 9 of 26 games for the Bulls. And so he's missed, quick math, he's missed 17 games, including 15 straight from October 30th through November 26th. So already the health stuff and the injury concerns concern me. I guess if it ended up being, if there's another setback from Vando, or it just sounds like he's not going to be back until like February, and you could flip Vando and Vando and Gabe for Lonzo, I would be open to that. Maybe you have to, I don't know from a pick perspective what you'd have to throw in, because he doesn't have a great contract. And I'm pulling up, I forgot how many years. I think is he expiring? He's an expiring contract. So if let's say Chicago, it's Gabe and Vando. Gabe's got 1 more year. Vando's got 3 more years. That makes that a really tough contract to take on. You probably have to throw in a second or 2. I'd be open to it. If Gabe continues to struggle offensively or regresses offensively because he's been better recently, and Vando is not tracking to be back within an ideal time frame, and you could trade those 2 and get Lonzo and give up a second or 2, I'd be open to that. Just taking the flyer on him. And that would also have to be him being relatively healthy. Maybe not I don't expect him to get back to full form this season necessarily, but I'd be willing to take the gamble. But the contract, the injury history, Lakers trying to match salary, it gets pretty tricky. So I don't really view him as a realistic target, but again, but with the history there, who knows? Sky Falcon 5, why do you think the team looks to mimic LeBron's energy, especially on the defensive end so much? He's 40. Shouldn't the 20-somethings be bringing their own energy? Any fixes, or do we load up on high motor guys? I would say in general, most teams take the cues from their best players. So I think most teams, to some extent, reflect their best players and their tendencies and whatnot. And I don't fault LeBron for not always being the most high energy guy, especially on the defensive end, because the dude's about to break the record for most minutes played in the regular season. He's about to be 40. He's in year 22. The fact that he can do what he's doing is incredible, and speaks to his once in a generation athleticism and longevity and skill and talent and just mental fortitude and all these things. It's a nuanced, complicated conversation, because then people bring up the contract and is he worth that and whatnot. And but in a vacuum, I think LeBron has exceeded. Like the Lakers knew what they were doing when they signed him this offseason in previous years. When you're betting on a guy in their late 30s for even as great as LeBron is, there's always some level of risk. And I think, all things considered, LeBron has continued to exceed expectations of what's realistic for a guy at his age to accomplish. So I think with the contract and with continuing to sign him and feature him as a superstar on this team, like you are acknowledging and willing to bet on the risk of LeBron. But all things considered, I think he's exceeded expectations. And I say that to say, like, I don't necessarily fault, like, I do think he could have better defensive effort. I thought it was better in the Memphis game. And there are certainly times where it can be better. But to your last question, I think it needs to really come from the rest of the group of like, we can't always rely on this guy to set the tone, at least from a defensive perspective. Like he can set the tone offensively. You still have AD setting the tone on both ends, but I think it should come from most of the group or most of the rest of the group. And the problem is the Lakers don't have a lot of guys to do that, right? Like, I think it even comes down to like a personality thing where even guys like Gabe and Cam and Max, I think I talked about it last night. I feel like they've really come into their own from an identity perspective and just figuring out their role on this team. But none of those three guys are like the fiery Dylan Brooks, Pat Beverly type. And those guys certainly have their flaws, their outsized egos and personalities and sort of outsized perception of self. But when they're on your team, like they do bring a certain level, even a guy like Dennis, right? Like those guys have a certain vocalness to their presence and a certain galvanizing force of like getting their teammates going that I don't think the Lakers have a lot of outside of LeBron and AD. And I think having another one or two of those guys could do wonders for this team just in terms of getting everybody going. And so I think getting Vando back helps, and I think that would certainly improve matters. But even Vando's kind of a quiet guy. Like it's interesting that like a lot of their defensive guys are kind of more quiet to themselves type guys, and they don't have a lot of those like loudmouth enforcer types. And I think every team kind of needs one or two of those guys, and I think it would be nice to get one. Super chat from Nicholas Buha. That is my brother. See, it's a family affair today. How do you view Jalen Smith and Nick Claxton as potential big man options? I like both of them. I think with Jalen Smith, he's an interesting name depending on the price. I think Claxton, the price is going to be high. It's going to be at least the first. And, you know, I guess that does take you closer to the 2020 model. I guess if you're willing to start him and play him a certain amount of time. And defensively, he's a really good, versatile defensive big who can switch on to perimeter guys, protect the rim, a bit slender. And that's kind of like maybe the one knock on him. Could also be foul prone at times. But I like both of these guys, depending on the price. I have not heard either of them attached to the Lakers, so I can't really speak to a potential price to either of them. I can pull up Jalen Smith right now. I like to just pull up their seasons so I can kind of evaluate it in real time. He's averaging 8 points, 5 rebounds, about a block, 45% shooting, 35% three-point shooting. I mean, if you could get him, he did just sign, what was his deal with Chicago? He signed a 3-year, $27 million deal. So he's got 2 more years. I mean, if that's a name that I'd be interested in. If you could flip Gabe and a second, and maybe even a protected second for Jalen Smith, maybe let's just say a second. That's a guy who, because of the defense and the floor spacing, I would actually prefer to Valanciunas. And then Claxton, I will pull him up, and he's averaging 10 points a game. He's gone down a bit offensively, 63% shooting, 8 rebounds, just under a steal, just over a block. So the rim protection hasn't been as good as it's been in previous seasons, but I'd be interested in Claxton for a first, assuming they can like I like Claxton and AD together defensively. Of course, offensively, there's going to be some spacing concerns, but I think, he's 20, he's 25. I like Claxton a lot. Diego Cardona, thank you for the super chat. Jovan, do you celebrate Christmas? If so, what's your favorite Christmas/holiday memory? Yes, I do celebrate Christmas. One now funny thing with Christmas is my wife's birthday is actually on Christmas. So her name is Helena. We call it Helena Miss, but it's a tough day to have a birthday. I would say it's arguably the toughest day of the year to have a birthday. Certainly, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, it maybe some other ones are up there, but I think Christmas is about as tough as it gets. She'll often say she gets a bunch of Christmas texts from people, but not birthday texts, because everyone forgets it's her birthday. Then it's tough to have holiday parties, because that's growing up. That was usually during winter break, and then people are with their family or they're out of town or whatever. So it's a pretty rough birthday. But I would say growing up, favorite Christmas memories were just kind of doing the same thing every year, which was wake up at 7. And for anyone who knows me, I'm not a morning person whatsoever. Like I'm a night owl. Shout out to the late night gang. But I'm up till 2 or 3 a.m. every night, no matter what. I kind of live a nocturnal schedule, partly because of the job, partly just because of how I'm wired. But 7 a.m., get up, open presents, have a hot chocolate, then later in life have a coffee, and then just watch basketball all day and have family over for lunch. And those are some of my favorite memories. With my brother just on, actually, one of the running jokes was no matter what gifts he would get, he would always be slightly disappointed and kind of expecting more, or he wouldn't like the color of the thing he got, or we had a lot of family videos of him being pretty upset about all of his gifts, which was funny. And then now having a son and being able to spend Christmas with him is like seeing Christmas through a child's eyes is obviously a amazing experience. And then now having a wife whose birthday it is on Christmas, it's gonna be tough this year because I got to fly to San Francisco for Lakers Warriors. So flying up the morning of, flying back the night of. I probably won't actually have a stream that night just because it's Christmas and it's her birthday, but it will likely do a stream the 26th in the morning. But it's a lot of new memories forming with having a son. But I would say spending the last few Christmases with my wife and it being her birthday and that being fun, but then also just the watching basketball all day as a kid and growing up with that and that being, and then now having covered, I think I've covered a Christmas basketball in LA since 2011, in LA or like on the road since 2011. So the last 13 Christmases, or after this year, the last 13 Christmases I've been able to cover. So it's been awesome. Super chat from King Rifa _Chifa. Would you trade D'Lo for a big? D'Lo, JHS, and Maxwell Lewis for Vucevic and Craig. So one thing with trading D'Lo for a big is I'm not entirely opposed to it, but I do think for as flawed as D'Lo is and as inconsistent and unreliable as he is, as I mentioned, the good version of D'Lo, the ceiling version of D'Lo brings a certain level of shot making and ball handling and playmaking and just offensive organization and control that no other Laker can provide other than LeBron. I would say even Austin at his ceiling is more of a scorer and self shot creator. Like I don't think he's a selfish player. I think he plays, he will make the open pass, and I think he has grown a lot, especially for like second half of last season into this season as a playmaker and a passer. But D'Lo grew up a point guard, and he's always been a guy with the ball in his hands. Even if he identifies as a basketball player, he grew up a point guard. He's always been a point guard. And I think losing that skill set on this team, I think the more we've seen, and I think it's reflected in his plus minus, but the more we've seen how important his skill set is, even with some of the lows, I do think the Lakers, if they end up moving D'Lo, need to find a way to get at a minimum, like a caretaker, another caretaker offensively, especially if they end up giving up Gabe too, because Gabe, I think, has some of those traits, not at the level of Austin, not at the level of D'Lo, but he obviously did some of that in Miami. What was more of a scorer than a playmaker passer. But I think the Lakers need if they end up trading D'Lo and Gabe, especially like both, I think they need to find a way to get another playmaking organizer, floor general offensively. And it's tough because it's almost like them trying to plug another hole creates a hole. But right now already, they've struggled at times offensively, especially recently, with staying organized, running good offense, making sure guys are involved, and spamming certain actions. So I think losing, if you flip D'Lo and Gabe for like a wing and a big, all of a sudden maybe you create another problem at backup point guard, or just having the requisite level of ball handling and playmaking. So I'll say I know Vucevic is having a really good year. I'm not as sold on him because I think any big the Lakers get needs to be a good defender, in my opinion. And Vucevic is not a good defender. Like, I'd rather have Valanciunas defensively. In a vacuum, I think it's close because Vucevic is a better shooter and offensive player. He's a better player than Valanciunas, but Valanciunas, I think, fits a little bit more as a better defender, a bigger, more physical type of guy. So I could see from a fit perspective, Valanciunas actually being the better fit. But so for that reason, for Vucevic and Valanciunas, I'm personally not in favor of them trading for either one. I think there's a chance they trade for them, especially Valanciunas, but I do like Torrey Craig, and I see the vision with what you're going for. I do think, though, if you end up trading D'Lo, you have to find a way to at least get like a backup caliber point guard that can play 12 to 18 minutes a night. And if not, and maybe that's Quincy Oliveri, but so far I don't think we haven't really seen him at the NBA level, which has been unfortunate. But I also think he's come down to earth a little bit in the G League, but by his hot start, the hot start that he had earlier on. So I also think he can struggle a little bit with shot selection and turnovers, and he's not quite that like pure playmaker. So that's like I become more open to keeping D'Lo, but it really depends on the packages, the prices, and all that stuff. Like I always say, like, nothing's in a vacuum. I don't try to live in absolutes. Okay, catching up with the chat here. Trying to. Well, Bloom's architect, as bad as Russell is, he is one of only 3 perimeter creators on the team. You do not trade him if you don't get another creator back. I'm generally on board with that. Cormac Carl Christie Jr. Hey, Jovan, what PG and wing options that can make a significant difference are there besides, assuming you mean Bruce Brown, DFS, and Cam Johnson, not counting Lonzo and Brogdon because of their 20+ million contract and being injury prone? I would throw in Colin Sexton. And then it's kind of slim pickings. I mean, I think it's important to look at the standings because the standings will often inform like who are going to be the sellers. So I think Portland, Utah, New Orleans is trending toward being a seller, though it seems like the 2 guys that everyone would want are Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, and they don't want to trade either of them. Sacramento, I don't think is going to be a seller yet. I think they're going to try and fight to be in the play-in. San Antonio is an interesting kind of crossroads team, but it feels like they're going to try and take a step and be a team that competes for the play-in spot. I wonder if the Clippers eventually get to the spot where they're sellers, depending on Kawhi and what goes on with that. But you could comfortably say in the West, Portland and Utah are going to be sellers. And is Anthony Simons a guy who becomes available? Looking at Portland's roster, I like Tumani Kamara. I think that would be a great guy to trade for if you could. He's only making $1.9 million. He's 24. A Scoot. That's not happening. Shaden Sharp, I don't think they're going to trade, but is Simons or Kamara? Kamara's not a point guard, but I just like Kamara. Those are a couple of guys. Looking at Washington's roster, Brogdon, although I don't love Brogdon. And then there's not really another point guard guy. Utah, I would say Sexton and Clarkson. Clarkson is not a point guard per se, right? He's more of a 6-man scorer type. Those would be two guys. And then looking at the Nets, I think we've covered most of the Nets guys. Claxton, Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, Sharp, Thomas. I know people have mentioned Zaire Williams before. And I guess Hornets and Raptors would be the other two teams. Though I feel like the Hornets are going to try and be a play-in team. Hornets, a popular one people like to mention in the chat is Trey Mann, Nick Richards. And then for Toronto, obviously Bruce Brown. I like Agbaji if they could get him. And yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of slim pickings right now. I think we need more time because what are the consequences of the play-in tournament right now has been that because now there's 20 teams, that play-in isn't the same as the playoffs technically, but you do have 2 extra teams in the postseason mix that keeps more teams in the picture. And that's what the NBA wanted. But having it used to be you have 8 playoff teams and then maybe another team or two are kind of on the periphery and battling to get in. And then you have 5 teams on the outside looking in and they start tanking. Whereas now it's 10 teams make it. So now that extends it to often 11 or 12 teams on the periphery. And then you only have 3 to 4 teams tanking. And it doesn't sound like much, but that extra 1 or 2 teams not tanking and punting on the season, I mean, 1, it makes things more competitive and a bit harder, but 2, from a buyer-seller perspective, it makes those teams less likely to be sellers. So right now, I mean, there might only be 5 or 6 teams selling over the next month or so, but with injuries, with slippage, as we have a larger sample size of the season, I'm sure there'll be another team or two that ends up pivoting and deciding to become a seller. I can guarantee New Orleans did not anticipate being a seller this season. I know some people had New Orleans in their top 6 in the West, and they've just been decimated by injuries. So I mean, I just went through some of the names, but it's pretty slim pickings. Zach Eason, Jovan, what do you think the cost of Bruce Brown will be? I'm thinking seconds. Also, have you heard Nick Richards or Dorian Sharp connected to us? Best case scenario, in my opinion, is DFS, Bruce, and Kessler. Agree with your last point. I think DFS / Bruce. I mean, if you get all 3, of course, that's great. But I think 2 of those 3 would be great. I'd throw Cam Johnson in there, and those would be my 4 top guys that seem to be realistic / have been linked to the Lakers. I've not heard anything on Richards. I've loosely heard Sharp is maybe a throw in a Nets trade with the Lakers if that happens. And as for Bruce Brown, I'm starting to think seconds as well. I'm thinking it's probably going to be similar to the Dennis price, maybe a little bit less of 2 seconds for Bruce Brown. I'm pulling up because he had knee surgery right before the season. So he's not actually played this year. I just wanted to double check that. So I would think if you're the Lakers, that's probably one you wait on until closer to the trade deadline. You want to see him back and healthy. I don't think the Lakers can afford to trade for a guy who has not played this season, especially with some of their recent health stuff. So I think Bruce Brown, if that happens, it's probably closer to February 6th. Omaris Hall, Jovan, you think the Lakers should stop switching AD on the perimeter? Once he's on the perimeter, the rebounding and blocking is gone. Yes, I think so. They've been more selective recently with AD switching, and I think that's why we've seen the defensive uptick over the last 3 games. Portland game, Minnesota, and Memphis, they've been a little bit more selective. You've seen AD in drop a little bit more, and LA in general being a little bit more selective with their switching as a team. So I would also say, like, those aren't 3 of the best offenses in the league. So I think it's also kind of played into the Lakers scheme a little bit with those 3 offenses. And, so I think I am interested to see what it looks like against like Sacramento and Golden State and Cleveland coming up. Those are some of the better offensive teams. I know Sacramento obviously hasn't had the best season, but still, I think that they provide a lot of issues offensively, especially for the Lakers. So I'm with you. I think one way to do this is to get better defenders, and then you can trust your perimeter defense a bit more. I think in some ways, the switching has been to protect some of the guys, partly to protect LeBron. And if you have better defensive personnel, you don't necessarily like. You either don't have to switch as much because you can keep guys in front of you, or you can switch, but then you're also, you have the defensive personnel to keep guys in front of you, even with the switching. So either way, I think in general, I agree with you. I agree with the premise that, and you have seen AD back more closer to the rim, closer to the paint more recently. And I think that's correlated to a better defense. And I think it would be better to continue that moving forward. Okay, I see. I'm apparently missed several super chats. I apologize. Super chat from Kane Carter. What's a role guy from Braun's first Cavs teams you'd love here? Would you do Rui/Gabe for John Collins? Can he be a AG PJ type for us? Did you come here with Trez? Okay, there's a lot of questions there. No, I did not come to the Lakers with Trez. That was a popular Clipper conspiracy theory. Role guy from Braun's first Cavs teams I'd love here. Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, some of those teams are pretty bad in terms of like role players. So I'm assuming by first Cavs teams, I assume you're meaning like the 2003 to 2010 teams. I mean, I was always a fan of Anderson Varejao. I guess him as like a backup center would be interesting in theory, but like I'm Anton Jameson, Big Z, Mo Williams, Larry Hughes would be a good fit within the right offensive role. But some of those, I'm probably blanking on. Maybe there's a 3-and-D guy. I'm not like. I mean, early Carlos Boozer, of course, right? But yeah, I mean, I would have to look at the rosters, but off the top of my head, I'd probably say Varejao or Larry Hughes, and then John Collins. Compared to the other 2 guys, I don't think is as well equipped to be a like 4.5 role player. Aaron Gordon is in a different stratosphere as a physical force and as a defender than John Collins. Collins, I would say, especially with Gordon has regressed a bit since going to Denver offensively, especially as a shooter. So I would say Collins probably has a bit more to his game right now offensively, but Aaron Gordon is just a monster and a freak athlete. Like he's both incredibly strong and athletic, and defensively it's not even a comparison between those two. PJ, it's a little bit more of a comparison. I would say he's a bit more of a perimeter guy than John Collins. I trust his jumper a bit more. And I mean, maybe like I could see the Collins PJ Washington comparison a little bit more. And maybe that's his upside. Collins to me is like, he's just really a small center. And I think he's skilled, he's talented, he can put up 20 and 10 nights, but like the defensive fit, I'm not quite sure where he is defensively on like a good team. Andrew Escamilla, thought I'd be following more this season, but haven't. What are your top reasons I should be following the team this year? The fan base turns me off. So on the fan base front, like I would say every fan base has fans who are gonna troll or be annoying or whatever. I would say the Lakers, because they have so many fans, that portion of the fan base could seem larger, or louder. But I don't think it's necessarily unique to Laker fans. I think it's just fandom in general. Top reasons you should be following this year. I think AD, he did have that stretch where there's a bit of a dip, but like on the whole, this has been arguably AD's second best season as a Laker. And even at times, you know, some of the best stretches of his career as a Laker. So I think AD, I think LeBron doing what he's doing in year 22, age 39. I think some like Dalton Connect, that was one of the most fun stretches of Lakers basketball in a long time, was that heater that Dalton Connect went on. So just seeing him continue to grow and develop, I don't think he's going to continue to shoot 10% on threes like he has been in December. And then seeing JJ grow as a coach, I think seeing what they do, with the trade deadline coming up in about 7 weeks, how the next 7 weeks go. So it's not been the easiest season. There's been a lot of ups and downs. It's been a bit of a roller coaster. There's been drama. I'm sure there'll be more drama. It's the Lakers, that there's always some level of drama. But I mean, if you're a true fan, like you ride it out with the team. Now, of course, in the age that we're in, like you have so many options for entertainment, from streaming platforms to social media to other sports to like whatever. So I'm not going to tell you how to be a fan or how to spend your time. It's if the Lakers are upsetting you that much, or the fan base is upsetting you that much, then like do something that makes you happy. Do something that's not going to upset you or be tough on you mentally. But I would just say, I think there are reasons to follow this team. Now, if we get to February 15th or I guess February 7th, and they haven't made a trade and things are going south, then I think we'll have a different conversation. But I think there's still, even if it's not, like if the Lakers aren't quite where you want them to be, that there's still things to be night to night interested and intrigued by. King Rifa _Chifa, thank you for the super chat. Can't you mitigate losing D'Lo with lots of defense, 3-point wings? Well, so you're saying trading D'Lo, I assume, and not like losing him in terms of like him checking out, but he's on the team. Yes and no. I don't. You don't replace the ball handling and the shot making and the playmaking and the passing like that. It changes the identity of the team. So I think my point earlier was just that if you are going to trade D'Lo, I think you need another guard who can do some of those things, and it's probably going to be hard to find someone that does it at the same level unless you're trading D'Lo for someone else that of a similar caliber. it doesn't seem like the Lakers are going to do that if they do trade D'Lo. But my point is just, I don't think you can trade him and potentially Gabe and then just kind of roll with like Quincy or JHS or Bronny as like your backup point guard. I don't think any of those guys are ready currently. That could change at some point during the season, depending on how they continue to develop. But as of right now, I would be very uncomfortable if I'm the Lakers not having another backup point guard if you trade D'Lo and Gabe. Super chat from Cisco. Zoe, DFS, and Richards realistic enough for a championship run? As I said a bit earlier, Zoe is a tricky one just because of the salary, $22.5 million. That is a lot to try and match. DFS and Richards, I think, could be either in two separate trades or in a 3-team trade with Charlotte. I would say in terms of, so realistic, potentially enough for a run. Depends who you give up. If you can keep Rui and D'Lo, and maybe you're giving up Gabe and Vando and JHS or something, and then a pick, one pick or a few seconds, whatever. I think you have something there that's at least better than the current version. Then you just got to get healthy and figure out the rotation. Ryan Ellum, thank you for the super chat. Hey, Jovan, love the show and appreciate all you do for the Lakers community. You might have already answered this, but what do you think the most likely trade scenario is? So I haven't answered it during this stream. I have answered it previously. My understanding of the most likely trade scenario would be a trade for Jonas Valanciunas, most likely something like Gabe and 2 seconds. Maybe it ends up being 3 seconds, looking at the Dennis price, and Washington probably at least asking for a first. LA would push back on that and really fight to not give up a first. I don't know if they would give up a first. I would assume not, but, or, maybe at most it would end up being like protected, but I think that's an overpay for Valanciunas. I've been on record. I'm not a big Valanciunas guy. I don't love the fit, but seems to have caught their eye. He was on LeBron's list as far as guys that he'd take a pay cut for. JJ kind of described Valanciunas over the summer when he was like, we want a big, bruising, physical center behind AD. AD has long wanted a center partner in the front court that's reliable and that he trusts. And looking at Valanciunas, he started I think it's 833 out of 880 games. So he's primarily been a starter basically his entire career until this year, where he's only started 6 of 24 games. He's averaging about 12 and 8. Shooting 56% from the floor. I think from a defensive mobility standpoint, he's cooked. Cooked is maybe he's fodder. He can be picked on, including by the Lakers, which I find hilarious that they continue to pick on guys' weaknesses and then target the guys the next season. Or like Russ in the bubble, they didn't guard him. He couldn't do anything. Then 8 months later, they trade for him. Valanciunas, they play off the floor twice in the regular season finale, the play-in game, both in New Orleans, and for some reason that wins over LeBron for him wanting him. I don't really get it, but look, he's big, he's physical, he's better than Jackson Hayes and Christian Wood. I'm not going to deny that, but is he that much of an defensive upgrade over those two guys? I'm not sure. I don't Jackson is more athletic and mobile than him. He's more versatile. He can play on the perimeter more. Christian Wood statistically is a good rim protector. So in the one specific scenario of banging with Jokic in the post or around the elbows or whatever, Valanciunas is better. He's bigger, he's stronger, but I also think Jokic might even have a quickness advantage over him, which is kind of crazy to say, but Valanciunas might be that slow defensively. So I'm not as sold on Valanciunas, but that's been the guy who's been the most attached to the Lakers. Now, I will say Lakers operate covertly, and sometimes the more buzz there is with a guy attached to them, the less likely it is to happen. It seems like going through the years, Bogdanovich, Turner, Hield, we have a sample size of multiple players that have been attached and coveted by the Lakers that they just have not ended up trading for. So I wonder if that's ultimately the way this goes. The other factor here is that there are several teams that need backup and or starting centers. So maybe there is a bit of a bidding war for Valanciunas, and that drives up the price. And then the Lakers either have to overpay or they're not as comfortable with the price. And maybe he ends up going, like if he ends up getting traded for a first, a protected first, or like 4 seconds, that's probably a price that the Lakers aren't comfortable with, and I wouldn't blame them. But, I already think, again, that they probably shouldn't trade for him, but it seems like that there's enough there that it might happen. So if I had to pick the most likely trade scenario, I would say Valanciunas, but I think I might say that the most likely trade scenario is one we don't expect, which could be not trading for anybody, but it could also be either a trade for a player or a trade with a team that no one sees coming. And that's just kind of how the Lakers have operated. Jerry Soriano, your lender for life. Thank you for the super chat. Would you offer up Reeves to Orlando for Wendell Carter Jr.? So one thing with Wendell Carter Jr. is he just signed an extension, and or not just, but before the season, so he cannot be traded this season. So Wendell Carter Jr. cannot be traded this season. So it would have to be in the off season. I don't think I would. And regardless of what I think, I don't think the Lakers would do this. I think they would look for other means to try and get Wendell Carter. But personally, I like the fit of him, but I think then you have a bit of a gap there in terms of like who's your third scorer. I don't think they have that guy on the team. Like, can you promote D'Lo then and do that? But like, I think there's a big reliability gap between D'Lo and Austin on like a night to night basis. So if you maybe do a subsequent trade where you fill that hole with a better or comparable third scorer, I'm potentially open to it. But I think Austin right now, given the team friendly contract and the skill set, similar to us talking about if they trade D'Lo, I think that they got to find a backup point guard that can help run the second unit. If they trade Austin, especially for a big, when their two best players are a 4 and a 5, I think that creates a hole there on the perimeter that I don't think. And I think Austin's better than Wendell Carter for whatever it's worth, but I also just think if we're theoretically trading Austin for a big, I think unless that big is a shot creator, playmaker, which there aren't many in the league, I think you're creating a separate hole in the roster. Okay, back to the chat. Chris 236, can the Lakers get Bob Myers? That's been a name that's been thrown around a lot, right? I mean, can they? Sure. Technically, yes. I'm sure that he would have a price to return. I would assume that price would be very high based on some of the Lakers' recent offers for, at least on the coaching side. It has not quite met the level of what some of those top people have wanted, be it Dan Hurley or Ty Lue, Monty Williams. That's going back now to 2019. But I would be skeptical that the Lakers, and then you also have the Rob dynamic of like, is Bob coming in? Are they like partners? Is one of the two ahead of that's a whole thing that they'd have to figure out. So I think Bob Myers would be a great addition, and I think he would make the organization better. But for both, like in terms of his potential role in the hierarchy and the price, I just don't see it happening personally. Kaio on LBJ for Jimmy Butler. I would not do that if I'm the Lakers. Dark Galaxy, percentage chance the Lakers make a move before Thursday. So what's the day? December 16th. Thursday is the 19th. That's the Sacramento game. Ooh, 10%, 15%. I don't think it's high. Art Worthy, Jovan. What are the chances reunited Jonas with Zion? Of reuniting Jonas with Zion and Cam with Zion? Are we okay? So Cam Reddish. Okay, I'm making the connection. So we're saying the Lakers are adding Jonas and Zion. I would say the odds are low. I don't. I think if Zion becomes available, I think he'll probably go for more than the Lakers can offer. I know that there's a lot of risk there, and there was the ESPN suggestion that Zion get cut and whatnot. But I think someone's going to talk themselves into Zion and taking the risk, and I think the price, be it maybe it ends up being 2 picks, but they have more attractive young guys, or maybe it ends up being 3 picks and the Lakers just can't match the pick price. I think Zion ends up being, if he gets traded, ends up going somewhere else. Kane Carter, is DeJounte Murray easier to get now? Rui, Vando, Lewis, and a first for DeJounte Murray than D'Lo, Wood, JHS plus seconds for DFS and Sharp. I'm not quite sure, especially because New Orleans gave up a lot. I'm pulling up the trade. I think it was 2 firsts, if I'm not mistaken. So they gave them 2 firsts, including the Lakers first, and that's a very valuable trade, pick. And I mean, right now with the Lakers being 10th in the West, like that's looking like a potential top 10 pick. And of course, I do expect the Lakers to rise up the West standings, but that's potentially a very valuable pick that they gave up for DeJounte. So there's the sunk cost fallacy, and we'll see if they end up kind of keeping him no matter what. But my guess is they'd want more than a first for him. So I would say I like where your head's at. I would just say, I don't know if it's a first and first and a second, first and a couple seconds. Maybe that gets you in the conversation, but I have a feeling that they probably look to ship out Ingram and Zion first. But the second part, I think that's realistic for DFS and Sharp. Will Cowan trying to get me canceled here with the question about pineapple on pizza. Real question, pineapple on pizza. Your thoughts? For me, it really depends on my mood. So I would say in general, I'm all for, I believe people should be able to do whatever they want, freedom. So if you like pineapple on pizza, more power to you. If you hate it and find it disgusting, more power to you as well. I've had it and I've enjoyed it. I don't find it disgusting. I know pineapple isn't for everyone in general, but pineapple on pizza obviously is a very polarizing topic. So what I would say with that is like it just kind of depends. Like I don't love it, but I don't hate it. I'm kind of in the middle on it. I have had it and it's been enjoyable. I've also had it and kind of been like, this is kind of disgusting. I'm not in the mood for it. So it really depends on what mood I'm in. But so I lean more yes, but it's not like a hard yes or like I don't have a strong opinion on it, I guess I would say. Denzel Pomera with the front office so quiet. Do you think it'll be like last season where no moves are made? I don't want to spoil my report coming on The Athletic, but I guess I'm gonna spoil it a little bit. Like my understanding, at least from talking to people around the league, because with the Lakers, you never know, of course, what the there are competitive advantages to not leaking certain things or sharing certain things, or even sharing misinformation to try and get certain narratives out there, right? And that's often why when you see people reporting on what a team is looking or what a team values, it's always a bit higher on like the team side, right? Because like Brooklyn is going to tell their beat reporter, we want 2 firsts for Cam Johnson. When like if you twist their arm, they probably would almost certainly would accept less for Cam Johnson, but like what they want out there is that perception. So I say that to say with the Lakers, it's always like, you know, they're going to want a certain narrative out there. And I think as someone covering the team, you obviously have to listen to what they're saying, but then you also have to do some digging yourself and try and, because it's harder to keep secrets around the league, because if they're having conversation, like, you know, the Lakers might say, oh, we haven't checked in on this guy, or we're not interested in this guy. But then you talk to an agent from that team, or you talk to that person's agent or whatever, or a front office person or a scout or, you know, just someone across the league. And if the Lakers have called about that person, or there's been conversations about it, especially if it's a neutral third party, you'll often get the truth that way. So with the Lakers, of course, there is always an element of secrecy, and they like to kind of keep their intel internal. But at least from a league perspective, a lot of people are operating under the assumption that the Lakers are going to make a trade. Now, the question is, how big is that trade going to be? What is the magnitude of that trade? Is it going to be a Jonas Valanciunas, a Gabe Vincent plus a pick, 2 picks, 3 picks, second round picks to be clear, for Jonas Valanciunas? And is that the move? Or is it that plus later on a bigger move with a first round pick? Is it not Valanciunas and something else for first round pick? Or, you know, is it dumping Christian Wood in a second somewhere and you open up a roster spot and you go sign someone? Like, there are magnitudes of size in terms of the type of deal that they could do. And it seems like there's some skepticism that they're going to use both picks. So that is one thing worth noting and sharing, is that it seems like most scenarios are the Lakers keeping one of the picks, trading one, and then using seconds or swaps. I personally think if they're really going for it, they should just throw both on the table and use them both. Of course, you don't want to overpay and make a bad trade, but I think if you are playing ball with both picks, most guys on the trade market are not even worth 2 picks. So you can at least get in almost any conversation. But then also, if you're doing like 2 separate deals, if you're willing to put a pick on the table for one and a pick on the table for the other, you can outbid, I think, other teams, or at least be in the conversation for those players. So I personally would be more aggressive, would probably trade both picks and say, hey, I probably have a year and a half left with LeBron and AD. Let me try and win a title this season and position myself to try and win one last title next season, and then figure it out after I've spent a couple of my future picks. And at that point, hopefully I have another star next to AD, or another couple stars and AD's retired or somewhere else or whatever. And I'm not even necessarily worried about picks. But of course, you always want picks, right? But I think that worrying about 2031 and 2024 or 2025, like, I mean, LeBron's going to be out of the league theoretically. AD is going to be 31 and going to be 32 this year in March. So he's going to be 38. So I'm not worried about that right now. I'm worried about, I have 2 top 15, top 12 players in the league. That's historically the recipe for a championship with the right supporting cast. Let me go get that right supporting cast. That's how I would operate. But to kind of go back to your question, it seems like the league perception is that the Lakers are going to make a move. Now, is it just Valanciunas and nothing else, or is it something more aggressive, or is it something small, dumping a guy to create an opening for like a buyout guy or a minimum guy? That's the kind of part that has yet to become clear. But people are operating on the assumption that they can't stand pat again. Otherwise, it's almost like at that point, they're just publicly admitting that they don't believe in LeBron and AD. Like there's no real way you can say you believe in those two and then not make a move at 2024 trade deadline, not make a move in the 2024 offseason, and then not make a move in the 2025 trade deadline. Like the messaging and the actions don't align. And if they don't make a trade, that's an action in and of itself. And that says, we do not believe in this group. We do not believe in those two as a tandem. And that's going to be an awkward press conference if it's February 6th in the afternoon. Lakers have not made a move. I will be there and I will be talking about it and I will be reporting on it. But there's really no way to spin that positively. L.A. Jovan, if Rob gets fired, which he should have been long ago, do you think Bob Myers would take the job? Would Genie spend the money? Has LA ties? UCLA guy operated from LA as an agent. I don't think Rob's going to get fired, for the record, at least not for a while. If he did, I think Bob Myers would make a lot of sense as a replacement, though. As for the money part, I mean, it seemed like they thought, to go back to the most recent situation, which was the Dan Hurley situation, they felt they were making a competitive offer. Obviously, he didn't feel like it was enough to leave. This is not the first time that they have, it's tough to say lowballed because it's so much money, but that the offer has not been to the candidate's liking or the market value or their own perception of their market value, which is ultimately like market value and what the other coaches are going for, what the other GMs are going for, doesn't really matter. It matters what the candidate that you want, your target, what they want and what they're willing to accept. So of course, within reason, but I don't think what Dan Hurley was asking for or interested in what was unreasonable, nor Ty Lue or Monty Williams. So I would have a bit of skepticism, but maybe, you would assume if they did move on from Pelinka, they would have a replacement in mind. And maybe at that point it is a blank check and it's just, let's get, as you said, there's, Myers has the LA ties. He has the track record, the pedigree, as an agent, but also as a GM and helping create the Warriors dynasty and managing that. So there would be a clear narrative there with bringing in Bob Myers, but I think that's a ways away in terms of Pelinka not being there. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. King Carter, what's your favorite Serbian food and liquor? Liquor's the easier one. I talked about it last night. It is rakia, which is Serbian brandy. It come from different things, but often, could be plum or a cherry or something. And it gets you going. Like for Thanksgiving, we took rakia shots before Thanksgiving, and we'll often do it as a celebratory thing. Actually, at my wedding, we had a couple of rounds of rakia shots for everybody, so that was fun. And favorite Serbian food, I would say, is cevapi, which is basically it's kind of I guess the closest way. It's sort of like a gyro, but not quite. But it's lamb and it's lamb and bread, and it's really good. So I would say those are my favorite food and liquor. Is that Pieter? K? Yo, Jovan, top tier content. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you. Chris236, my girlfriend likes pineapple on pizza, so I eat pineapple on pizza. Look, you are a smart man, Chris. You are you're a good boyfriend. Ken Carter, Jovan looks like a mix between Austin, Zach Collins, and Tyler Hansbrough. I will take offense to the Tyler Hansbrough comparison because his eyes were popping out of his head. But I've gotten Austin, Zach Collins, Myers Leonard. I've gotten Dalton. I've gotten Ivica Zubats. I've gotten Jokic. Basically any white player or Eastern European player I've been compared to. So at this point, I'm used to it. Samuel, your favorite beer? I like I would say that there's three in the mix. I would say Mango Cart, Blue Moon, or Stella. I do like beers on the blonder, weedier side. I honestly like it. It's funny because sometimes I I used to be embarrassed and now I just own it. But I do like I would say girlier drinks. It's funny because when me and my wife go out and get drinks, like she'll get a whiskey sour or something like that, and then I'll get some like lavender strawberry drink or something, and then they'll give it to her and they'll give me the whiskey sour, and then right when the waitress walks away, we'll quietly swap drinks. But for me, I'm like, if I'm gonna drink something, I want it to taste good. I don't want to drink something I find disgusting or super bitter or sour. Although I have sour beers have grown on me, but in general, I like wheat beers. I like hefts. I like blondes. I like lagers. And my top three would probably actually go Mango Cart, Stella, Blue Moon in that order. But I think it's pretty close. But I lean into it. Like I'm not an IPA guy. I'm not a big like Guinness guy. That's not my cup of tea. L.A. Great beer choices, Jovan. Have you tried Boddington's or Delirium Tremens? I have not, but I am I'm open to it. What type of beers are those? Dylan Neville and Brooks. Jovan, do you believe Rob Pelinka and Genie will make a trade or another lie? So I just touched on this. I think the Lakers are going to make a trade. It's just it's about the magnitude of the trade. Sean Parker, Jovan, how do you feel about the new All-Star format? I don't love it, but at the same time, I'm like, the other formats the previous format was not working. I liked the Elam ending, and it felt like it provided a temporary boost to the game, but that has since faded. And I guess like I would like to see it just be the way it was with East versus West, and similar to the play-in, or I mean, not the play-in, the NBA Cup, them figure out a way to incentivize the guys, like it be a certain cash prize or home court advantage in the playoffs or the NBA finals for one of the conferences, or something where it gets the guys to play a little bit more competitively. It seems like they haven't liked that idea or haven't thought it was worth. I mean, if you're giving them enough money, like the money's got to come from somewhere, right? So you gotta rearrange the finances. Money doesn't just pop out of nowhere. So maybe that one's a little tricky, but the home court advantage one, I think if I'm Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown or Jalen Brunson or Donovan Mitchell or Giannis, or in the West, if I'm Shea or Jokic or Luka or KD or LeBron and like, I'm all of a sudden caring because I'm like, if I get to the NBA finals, I want home court advantage. So I think that would potentially get them to care a bit more and try a bit harder. And even if it's the same thing where it's kind of like the first 3 quarters, no one gives a shit. And then you get to the 4th quarter, like then all of a sudden people are going to care and people are going to try maybe at that point it's a blowout and it doesn't matter. But like, I think if it's relatively close, people are going to care about home court advantage in the finals. Kane Carter, have you ever seen a team lose chemistry dramatically through a season to the point you could feel in the locker room? Yes, the 2019-20 Clippers when I covered them. Sam Davison, Angry Orchard. I do like Angry Orchard. Ken Carter, Jovan, what's your favorite love song? Are we talking like bedroom song or are we talking like R&B, like slow, like, more dramatic love song, or like what are we talking here? I need some more context. I do have a bedroom playlist, but I will not be disclosing that. Kevin Cambridge, what do you think could be done to improve the ratings? Actually, there's someone who had a really good tweet thread that I enjoyed that was about, it was Raheem Palmer, who from The Ringer, where it was like, I thought it was kind of copying EuroLeague. I'm going to pull it up and I will share it on my screen. I thought he had some pretty good ideas. Let's see. Okay. Now I'm trying to find it. Okay, I got it here. I will share it on the screen. Okay. So he says, this is how I'd fix the NBA, shorten the season, 66-game season. You play every other team twice, except the teams in your division. You play them 4 times. Maybe you can make up the lost games with the in-season tournament in some capacity. Get rid of East and West. The best 16 teams make it to the playoffs. Get rid of the play-in tournament. 16 teams make it. We don't need any more. All the play-in tournament does is reduce the value and stakes of the regular season. Point differential should determine home court advantage, not record. Also, home court in the playoffs gets 5 of the potential 7 games in a postseason series. You want to take one night off in December because it doesn't matter. Well, it does now. Playoff teams can pick their opponent. There's a draft before every round in the postseason, and this can create additional content for the league. So I'm in favor of shortening the season. I don't know what the right number is. I think 66 is close. I've seen some people say 72. I've seen 64, 68. I think some at least shaving off 10 games. It does mess with the record books and NBA history and stuff, but I think just the way that this is trending, like the data says to rest a certain amount or not, like what's best for teams and for players is somewhat opposed to what's best for the health of the league and the product and for fans. And it's like, so the data says shoot more threes, play a certain style of play. And then it also says rest guys a certain amount. And, like, so those two things are at odds with one another. And I think finding some way to kind of meet in the middle would be advantageous. And I think shortening the season would encourage that. I'm not the get rid of East and West. I don't know. I think like it would have the effect of making things more competitive. I still, from a geography perspective, I think I kind of still prefer to keep the conferences separate, especially for the playoffs. Like, it's easy to say just do 16 teams, but when you have Boston and the Lakers playing, and then Boston and the Suns playing, and like, it's just, that is a really difficult series to cover. And even from a scheduling perspective, you got to factor in the travel days, and like, it's not just like an every other day situation necessarily. So I think that gets a little complicated. Point differential over record, I kind of like, because I think sometimes we see situations where a team gets lucky in close games, or the schedule just breaks in their favor. They win more games, but like, they're not actually as good, and point differential tends to correlate better to which team is actually better. And then the picking the opponent, I think, is awesome, because that would be, just imagine the bulletin board material and the level of disrespect for OKC's the number one seed in the West, and they pick the Lakers, or they pick whoever, and it's just like that. Like, you're creating all of a sudden this animosity, this rivalry. Like, we're going to be at practice asking JJ about it, asking LeBron about it. There's inevitably going to be some tension, and from a product and like viewership and just intrigue standpoint, I think that creates something. Now, I'll say I think these things are drastic, and I don't know how many of them are actually realistic. I think shortening the season, like the big thing, of course, is the business perspective, and you lose a lot of money. That I think that, at that point, they'd probably have to increase the price of NBA tickets, increase the price of League Pass. Like, there would be these other ramifications where they try and make up the money that could kind of backfire. But I think it's less about like 3-point shooting and analytics and some of the things that people have kind of tried to blame it on. And I think it's more of the regular season just doesn't have the same juice as it does in, like, let's say football, where every week matters, every game matters. And with an 82 game season, it's just hard to replicate that. And then on top of it, you've had this shift towards resting players and keeping them healthy and prioritizing their workload throughout a season, which you didn't necessarily have in the past. And that ultimately leads to guys sitting out games, and that messes up the product, and it messes up the fan experience. So I think the NBA in the big picture will be fine. I think there are certainly some challenges and hurdles that they have to figure out right now. But yeah, let me, I'm going to get back to the chat here. Curious what you guys think. Dark Galaxy, picking the opponent, every team is going to pick the worst team or the Lakers. Well, if you pick the Lakers, you're going to get ratings. That'll be good. L.A. Yo, Jovan, are you surprised at who is reportedly off limits for trades in New Orleans? I love Jones and Murphy, but they seem more like players you add once you have your stars figured out, which they don't. A little bit, like, and I'm sure those guys aren't off limits. That's just, again, kind of sometimes the intel that comes out. Like, even a guy like Austin's not off limits. The Lakers just have a very high threshold to trade him. And I think part of it with Jones and Murphy is that those guys are on good contracts, and they kind of fit in any situation. Like, any team could add Herb Jones or Trey Murphy and start those guys or bring them off the bench, depending on what the team's starting lineup and rotation look like. And those guys are plug and play, and they just make you better. So I think because of their potential value, and really, like, outside of a superstar, 3D wings are arguably the most coveted player archetype in the league, because if you look at the two best teams in the league, Boston and OKC, both teams have a bunch of guys in between like 6'5" and 6'9" that can play multiple positions, that can shoot, pass, dribble, switch across multiple positions. And that's just the way that the league is trending. And really the way it's been trending since like the Heatles days and the early Warriors days. And it's just been like the wing position has become so important. Also kind of funny to me because the Lakers have not really prioritized the wing position, and it's been smaller guards and big men that they've prioritized. And I think the wing position is arguably the most important in the league, but you know. Super chat from Angelco Ezorad Rezo. Yo. Thanks always for the excellent quality content. Sorry, I've been going for about an hour 40, so my reading comprehension isn't great. But thank you for the compliment. Do you think the Lakers will trade D'Lo, JHS, and Gabe Vando, who is available for trade? That would be a defensive matchup for Gordon. I assume you mean Aaron Gordon here. I don't know that they trade all of those guys. I would suspect that they trade at least 2 of those 4, if I had to guess. And what combination of depends on which type of player they're getting back. In terms of a defensive matchup for Aaron Gordon, he's a pretty tough guy to match up with because most bigs or forwards are either too small and not like big enough and strong enough for him, or the bigger guys are too slow. Like he's got a really unique combination of size and athleticism and speed that just makes him pretty difficult. I would probably trend toward a bigger guy being a better matchup for him. I think we've seen even Rui, who's like by no means a small guy, and actually from like a size perspective, it is relatively close to Gordon. Gordon's a little bit taller. He's obviously a bit heavier and stronger, but like that shouldn't be like a lopsided matchup. And yet Gordon has his way against Rui. So I would lean, I guess, like a more defensive minded like center or big power forward. Off the top of my head, I'm not quite sure who that is. Like, I guess you could do Valanciunas. Like, if you got Valanciunas, you could put him on Jokic and then you put AD on Gordon, and maybe that is sort of a way to kind of address that. But Gordon is a pretty tough matchup. Pieter K, not gonna lie, Reeves is so underrated. Why do people hate on him so much? It's a good question. I might be the wrong person to ask because I feel like no matter what I say about Austin, I get it from, well, mainly from the negative direction of like I'm being too pro Austin. But I think regardless of what, if you think Austin is overrated or whatever, like he's making $13 million and Austin has outperformed his $13 million contract. He's making $14 million next year. He's going to be worth more than $14 million. Like Austin plays like a $20+ million player, and the Lakers currently don't have many players outplaying their contract value. I would argue AD is one. I would argue Austin is one. And then it gets a little murky in terms of who else is actually outplaying. Like Cam has had moments where he's probably outplayed a minimum contract. I would say on the whole, Rui and D'Lo have probably underperformed relative to their contracts. Gabe has underperformed relative to his contract. Vando has underperformed. Dalton, but he's on a rookie deal, so it's a little different. Not quite, apples to apples comparison. And Jackson has had moments, and I think Max recently has had moments where he's been a little bit better than his contract, but he also had moments where he wasn't. So Lakers don't have a lot of guys who are outperforming their contract, is my point. Austin is one of them, and that's why there's also the narrative of he's a homegrown kid and player. He's not a kid, and that's something that like he's become a fan favorite internally. But yeah, Austin. Dark Galaxy. People hate Austin because of the whole untouchable concept, which isn't true. I guess that's a part of it. And he's not untouchable. It's just, I think because of the contract, their standard for trading him is a bit higher. So, maybe they are putting in a little bit more into it because of, again, finding him. And I think there's also, I'm sure on some level, kind of remembering the Caruso situation and letting a homegrown talent that was a fan favorite walk and kind of botching that. And the Lakers have talked about it before, but at times kind of been reactive to certain situations. And I think we've seen it, especially since the Russ trade, where they've been much more hesitant to give up draft capital after the Russ debacle. So maybe with Caruso and I mean, I would even say some of the G League guys that they've let walk, that have, like a Scottie Pippen. I think that they're sensitive to not retaining some of the young talent that they've discovered and developed. So I think that's another part of this. But Austin's not untouchable. I just think sometimes people throw him into deals where, regardless of if I think they should make the deal or not, I'm telling you the Lakers would not make that deal. So if you want to get upset with the Lakers. Brayden, hey brate, what's a realistic needle-moving trade you'd make if you were the GM of the Lakers? My favorite is JHS plus a first and maybe removing the top 4 protection on the 2027 pick with Utah. I think that's a huge needle mover because you're removing a guy who's not even in the rotation and you're adding a guy who could start or come off the bench in Walker Kessler. And he's 23. He could be a long-term piece. He could be a starting or backup center for you for the next 7 to 9 years, depending on how his career goes and whatnot. But like, he could be a long-term piece for them. Lakers don't just have to look across the city to see Ivica Zubac, and that being another guy that they let get away that I think would have been a great fit with AD and could have been a starting center for them for quite a while. So I think Walker Kessler is the one for me in terms of trades that would be a needle mover. Otherwise, I think it's some combination of Dorian Finney-Smith or Cam Johnson, potentially both, depending on what that pick package would be. But either one of those guys plus Walker Kessler, I think those are probably my 2 favorite potential Laker trades. Sam Davison, DFS can guard Gordon or MPJ. Yeah, I think he's a little bit small for Gordon, but he is tough. Like, I will say DFS has an attitude. Like, he's got some of that toughness, some of that grit that I think the Lakers could use. Like, I think the term it's probably most appropriate is like he's got some dog in him that he could battle Gordon inside. But I think putting him on MPJ would probably be better than any of the Lakers' current options. So you got super chat from I really like basketball. I do too. Welcome. Jovan, what's up, big dog? I put your content on during my commute to work, and you provide a lot of value to my bleep of a schedule. Well, I appreciate that. That's what I aim to do. Love you, bro. Purple and gold hearts. Love you too. Thank you. That means the world. These types of comments. This is what I do it for. This is. I get self-fulfillment out of doing this, and this has been an awesome platform and outlet to talk about my job and coverage and really expand on things. But getting the feedback from you guys in the chat and in person, if you guys ever see me at a Laker game at home or on the road, for those of you that have come up to me, it's always been awesome to chat for a second, take a picture, whatever. And like comments like this are amazing, and I appreciate you and love you too. I don't know your name, but I see you got the 80s Showtime guys. Is it the 80s Showtime guys on the boat? I can't tell. Actually, I think I see D'Lo and LeBron, so maybe not. But I thought that was the Showtime guys on the boat. But anyway, I appreciate you. Okay. I really like basketball. It says 2023 Lakers. Okay. There we go. Western Conference Finals team. Ken Carter, what's your go-to vacation spot? I don't have one per se. I did get married in Palm Springs, and I've been there a bunch of times. So like that's maybe kind of like a more like a closer vacation spot. But I'll say my favorite city outside of LA is probably Paris. I've been in Paris several times. That's where I proposed to my fiance. I proposed in front of the Eiffel Tower, and I just love Paris culture. I'm a big coffee guy, so just walking around, hanging out, going to coffee shops, eating food, like that's my type of vacation. I'm more of a city person than like a beach tropical person. Although my wife will force me to like we did Hawaii for our honeymoon, but I'm a big like Paris, London, New York. I love the big cities and just kind of walking around, experiencing some of the energy in the city and going to coffee shops, going out to drink, whatever. That's my favorite thing to do. Samuel, do you like Mexican beer? I do. I like Modelo. I like Corona and Dos Equis. So, yeah. Sean Parker, Jovan, have you ever been to Dubai? Also say Tecate. Jovan, have you ever been to Dubai? No, I've not, but I would love to go. Duran, Lakers equals effort equals playoff contention. Yes, the Lakers need to play hard. That's I don't get why they don't, but as so Dylan the Villain Brooks said, who's my favorite player? And as Lakers in 7 astutely noted here, he said Braun, Jokic, and Shaq. Those are my 3 favorite players of all time. Cisco, if we got breaking news we traded for Levine, would you be disappointed? It depends on who they're giving up. The problem just is he's making over $40 million, and it gets really tough for the Lakers to match that without decimating. Like even if it's like D'Lo, Gabe, and Vando, I guess you get close. D'Lo's making about, let's see, that's about you're getting close. You probably have to throw in JHS and I'm Levine, similar to Vucevic and Valanciunas. I think that the defense is what scares me. Lakers in 7. Jovan, thoughts on the sack matchup and Max versus Fox? I think Max can, like Fox is similar to John Morant. I think he's a better step back jump shooter and mid-range 3-point threat. So I think Max is going to have his hands full in that regard, because I think with Ja, you kind of know he's going downhill all the time. So you can kind of retreat, and Max is good. LFR just had a conversation on this, which I thought was really high level, but in terms of Max being good at retreating and contesting, and that's one of his strengths defensively. So I think Fox is a similar type of guy in terms of the speed and the downhill ability, but he's much more of a floater, stop and pop, stop and herky jerky step back jumpers. So a little bit of a different challenge, but I think Max, I'm interested to see how he fares. I've said before, I think when Max has a size advantage, he tends to fare better defensively against some of these elite perimeter guys. It's also I'm going to be interested to see how they defend the Fox Sabonis 2-man game with the way that they've been switching a little bit less. Are they because you don't want Max switching onto Sabonis, similar to how Lakers switching in the Denver game Austin or Cam or D'Lo onto Jokic. Like that's not going to work. So I think you got to be selective with how you defend that, and guys have to be ready to help and then spray back out and rotate and scramble. Sack matchup, I think LA's goal should be to split. I think it's going to be really difficult to win both of those games. So looking at it, Sacramento right now is 12th in the NBA. 12th in the West, 13-13. So they are one game back in the win and loss column from the Lakers. They are 6-7 at home and 7-6 on the road. So LA obviously has to split. Otherwise, Sacramento is going to jump them in the standings, and LA is going to fall outside of the play-in tournament currently. So if LA loses both games in Sacramento, because LA plays in Sacramento, they have a baseball-style series of at Sacramento Thursday, at Sacramento Saturday. So if they lose both those games, they're 14-14, and they almost certainly will be outside of the top 10 because Sacramento will have jumped them. They'll be 15-13. If they split them, they'll be 15-13. Sacramento will be 14-14, and LA will still at least be ahead of them. Of course, if they can win both, like that's the goal, but I'm trying to be realistic here. LA's 5-9 on the road. They have not fared well against above 500 teams on the road. So realistically, I think a split is like a realistic goal. And that's, if I'm the Lakers, that's what I'm trying to do. So I think Sacramento is going to win one of these games, potentially decisively, or 10 to 15 point win. I think the question is what happens with the second game. Can LA, I think one of these games will go Sacramento's way, like 10 to 15 points. I think one will be a close game, and it's just a matter of can LA out execute and win that game, or does Sacramento win it and they go 2-0 in the double homestand. So two big games though, because this is a team that LA is in direct competition with in the standings. They're up a full game on right now, and if they're not careful, they could be out of the play-in tournament. Of course, a lot of time left in the season, but you don't want to be 12th in the West at Christmas, right? So that would be sending the wrong message and trending in the wrong direction. And what's crazy is one thing, and I forgot, I think it was 2 streams ago, someone asked me like, what's something to be optimistic about with the Lakers? I think I was mainly talking about LeBron and AD and just if they can get the right pieces around them. But here's a crazy thing. If the Lakers make their free throws against Orlando, which is not a crazy like what if scenario, like if they just make one of those free throws or 2 of the 4 that they missed in the final 40 seconds, and they don't botch the switch against Trae Young, they would be 16-10 right now, which would put them at number 5 in the West. And they would be a full game back of Dallas for number 4. So those 2 games going against the Lakers in the final seconds. And look, the basketball is a game of margins, and we can hypothesize about what the Lakers could have done, what they should have done, the alternate reality. Like the reality is they lost those 2 games, but they were razor thin margins that if they win both of those games that they arguably should have won, they would be the 5 seed right now, and we would be having a totally different conversation about this team. And both of those games came down to basically one possession not going in the Lakers' favor. So again, what matters is the results, and the Lakers lost those games, and they made mental errors in those games. And this has been a trend at times with this team. But I say all that to say, like, even if they win one of them, they're 15-11 and they're the 6th seed. So 1 or 2 of those games going in LA's favor, as they probably should have 6 or 7 out of 10 times, Lakers are the 5 or 6 seed right now. And again, we're having a different tenor of the conversation around LA. But right now they're in the 10 spot, tied for 9th with the Clippers. And people are a bit more down on them. But if they could win at least one in Sacramento, or maybe even win both, and start to kind of right the ship, then it only takes like a 3 or 4 game win streak in the West to jump multiple teams, and all of a sudden we're having a different conversation about the Lakers. So that I guess would be another thing I'd add to the potential positives with the Lakers moving forward. I do have to go In about 5 minutes, I'm doing a radio interview with ESPN LA. So I will do 5 more minutes and then we will wrap. Rubens, they missed like 10 free throws against Memphis too. Yeah, the free throw shooting, I mean, it's been an Achilles heel for this group for a while, despite how much they can get to the free throw line. Sean Parker, Jovan, do you watch UFC, MMA? Not really. I'll see highlights and stuff, but I'm pretty locked in on NBA. Dark Galaxy, thoughts on headband AR? It feels like he's played a little bit more like white chocolate. Jason Williams, the point guard for the Kings, the Grizzlies, and the Heat. I feel like he's had a little bit more flair, a little bit more flavor for AR. So I guess I'm for it. And Dark Galaxy, I know you had asked earlier that what my hobbies are. I don't really have many hobbies outside of this. Like, this has almost become a second full-time job to my like original full-time job as reporter for The Athletic. So I'm just locked in on Lakers basketball, my job, also spending time with my wife on our off days, spending time with my son. He lives out of state, so that, you know, like last week went to see him for 4 days. So a lot to kind of juggle in terms of personal life with work life, but I'm pretty much just basketball, eat, sleep, and breathe basketball, and that's my life. Denzel, Jovan said ball is life, literally. That is it, man. Michael D, thank you for the super chat. How important do you think accounting for personalities is compared to raw on-court fit? It's been mentioned how little this group communicates on D due to having a lot of introverts. I like this question, and I like that observation by you. I don't know if that's coming from you or other people talking about it. I think it's huge. I think it's this is a relatively introverted group. They don't like, of course, I think like I'm an introvert, for example, right? And I can turn on the charm or the personality a bit on here or at work, and like I think when you're more comfortable in a situation, you can kind of come out of your shell as an introvert. And I think if you walk into the Lakers locker room, like they're going to be joking, and it's not like it's crickets in there. It is a bit more quiet than like I would say maybe the average locker room, but like they have their own internal jokes and you know, dynamics in the locker room. But by nature, it is a more quiet group than maybe the average team, and I think that is certainly a factor, and that's where having guys in the past like Dennis, even Russ, I would say, the on court fit was about as bad as it got, but from a personality, being a vocal leader, like he brought something. But Dennis, Pat Bev, also not the best on court fit, but he brought something. I think the championship season, Rondo was a big factor with this. I mean, I think D'Lo has had moments, but D'Lo can also be a bit moody and not, you know, I think that can kind of fluctuate with him. But I think it's a big thing, and I think if the Lakers can maybe swap in a couple of guys that are a bit more vocal, that could potentially help. Now, looking at some of the names, I don't know, like DFS, I think has like the personality of like, he's just not going to take shit, but Cam Johnson, Walker Kessler, I don't think those guys are the most talkative. Bruce Brown, I think, has a little bit of that to him, and that's partly what I would like about Bruce Brown if they added him. I mean, he was talking a bunch of shit to the Lakers during that Denver series, and since he's gotten into it with D'Lo. So I think they need a little bit more of that, to be honest. Super chat from I really like basketball. I know the Clippers are the team in the basement, but did seeing the Brody go down swinging versus Suns in the playoffs warm your heart as a Hoops fan? So we're saying Clippers Suns. I I will keep this. I'll just say I'm not a big fan of that individual. I'll leave it at that. Sean Parker, Jovan, can you start making encouraging comments before editing the streams after a loss? You know what? I will try. Hopefully you're watching and you can remind me if I forget. But yeah, I really like basketball. Says fair enough, bro. LMAO. I thought it was a fun series. It was a fun series. And look, I think Russ. I think Russ has good intentions. But yeah. Michael D. Daily affirmations. Yes, I guess I have to give daily affirmations on the Lakers. ASD123, yo, when's the last time you touched the ball? It's been a couple months. I played once post Achilles. But Justine Severo, Jovan on fire. I will take it. I think that was from earlier in the chat, but I will take it. I'm gonna go about 2 minutes, and then I literally have to go. Ken Carter, I know you're a Russ fan. I'm sorry. We just didn't see eye to eye. L.A. Jovan, why SC over UCLA? So I actually grew up, I talked about this once before. I grew up a UCLA fan. Like I was a huge fan of, ironically, Russ and Kevin Love, Eric Aflalo, Darren Collison, Lorenzo Mata, Ryan Hollins, Luke Mbamute, Josh Shipp. I can name a lot of the guys from that era of UCLA basketball. So that was the stretch when they went to multiple Final Fours and lost to Florida and was it Memphis, I think. But so I grew up a UCLA fan, but once it came to college time and college applications, I wanted to go to schools that had journalism. Once I decided I wanted to be a journalist, and unfortunately UCLA did not have a journalism program. They only had a communications program, and could have still done that and like written for the school paper, but I wanted a school with journalism. USC offered that. I actually did not get into UCLA for the record. So that kind of killed that dream, but got into SC, got into the journalism program, and made the switch. It was awkward at first, but now I'm SC through and through, and fight on. Michael D, are you back to 100% in terms of trusting your foot enough to play, or have you kind of punted on ever playing intense pickup games again? It's tough because I would say I'm not 100% back, but I'm like 85, 90% back. And I love playing basketball, but I wish I was streaming and had a YouTube channel back when this happened, because it would have been almost like a diary to kind of talk about it. Cause like I was in such a dark place, like literally a year ago, where for 2 weeks I had to shower in a chair and I couldn't walk. Then for a while I had to walk in a boot. I couldn't drive for like 3 months. Like 10 out of 10 do not recommend tearing your Achilles. It is one of the worst injuries you could have. And even now my Achilles will still get a bit stiff, and I got to stretch it out and walk it out and stuff. So it's just I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze with, like, if I were to re-rupture it or rupture my other one, pull like a Cam Akers and then rupture my opposite Achilles, I would be back in a dark place. And I don't really want to experience that again. So I'm not fully retired yet, but I'm mulling retirement. I don't know if it's worth it. I will. Okay. Rob Earth, I'm doing two more. This is the second to last one. Rob Earth, do you think we should consider upgrading our point guard position? Rondo is the key to the last championship. Who do you think would be a good fit? So similar to the D'Lo conversation we had earlier, I would say that I think if you trade D'Lo and Gabe, you need to replace them with some type of backup. Now the problem is like JJ's kind of talked about playing whack-a-mole, and like the Lakers have 3 to 4 holes on this roster that they need to address. And if you try to get a backup center and another wing and maybe like a bigger athletic guard, you could, if you go out and get those 3 things, it's hard to like get those things and keep D'Lo or Gabe, like, and go get another point guard. Like you can only do so many moves and get so many players. So realistically, I think it's like you probably have to pick 2 to 3, like 3 things tops, but probably more realistic, like 2. And I don't know that I would put a point guard. I don't know if I'd prioritize a point guard over a big wing or a better backup center, or even a couple of big wings, you know? So I hear you, and I agree to an extent. I also just look at the current point guard market, and I don't see, if there was the right player who would be a great fit, you can maybe talk me into it. But based on the current guys projected to be available, I don't see that type of player. There's no Rondo type right now that would elevate this group. Okay. I'm doing one more. I'll end on this one. Sean Parker, Jovan, what's the difference between a reporter and an analysis? So analysis, you're an analyst, you're giving your analysis and your opinion, and it's more coming from being an expert or either as a former player or someone who really studies the game, does a lot of research, a lot of film work, data work, etc. Reporter is, you are on, like, you could be an analyst from your couch, you could be an analyst from a studio, you could be an analyst at games as well, but reporters tend to be boots on the ground. Doesn't have to be a beat reporter, but could be a national reporter. You are talking to people and you are getting more of your information on, through sourcing and those types of conversations. So I try to kind of straddle both lines. Technically I'm a reporter and not an analyst, but I think my podcast and my channel are more my analyst hat. I do try to mix in some reporting with it as well, but it's a bit of a delicate balance. I do try to differentiate when I'm reporting versus when I'm just giving an opinion, but that's really it. It's honestly in the names. Like, reporters report and they tell you what they're seeing and what they're hearing on the scene at games, in conversations with front office people, agents, players, etc. Analysts are giving you their opinion that could also be partly informed by reporting, but a lot of analysis like Zach Lowe is kind of the best of both, where he was an analyst who was also doing a lot of reporting to inform his analysis. But now, analysts are by nature more opinionated and more based on kind of like, I would say, more subjectivity, where reporting is supposed to be more objectivity. But on that note, I do have to go. I am probably going to be getting a call from ESPN LA like right now. So thank you all so much for watching and listening. I appreciate you all for tuning into the stream. We will have to do this more often. I will be back tomorrow with a new episode of Buha's Block, most likely on the trade story that I'll have going up on The Athletic, and walking through different questions and topics with the Lakers and the trade situation, some of their restrictions with the cap, and just some of the things that like which guys will be available, which guys won't. which guys they might be interested in and what their plans are and stuff. So be on the lookout for that. That'll be likely coming out Tuesday afternoon or early evening on Pacific Coast time. But we did 2 hours and 15 minutes. I'm proud of us. I appreciate you all again for tuning in. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you made it this far, please subscribe, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Again, I'll be back on Tuesday with a new episode of Buha's Block, potentially another one on Wednesday. And then next live stream will be Thursday after the Kings game. I will be there in Sacramento documenting that game. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you all again. Enjoy your evenings, days, afternoons, wherever you are. Appreciate you all. And I will talk to you all very soon.